For the first time since Bifrost was destroyed, the Nine Realms are at peace. They're well reminded of our strength, and you have earned their respect and my gratitude.
Thank you.
I'm imagining that forever Thor's story will be split between Asgard and the Nine Realms and also Earth. Part of the challenge is to balance his godliness and the kind of humanity that we feel in him, so the story will always revolve tightly around Midgard.
It's really fun to get to come back and play Jane again. I think it's rare to get the opportunity to play female scientists.
We're always coming from the point of view of how would an astrophysicist see these amazing events happening.
It's fun to see all the characters back together and how they've all changed. Like, Selvig's gone crazy now because of what happened with Loki and the Avengers.
Seeing Stellan play a character whose mind has been somewhat torn asunder, and yet he's still correct about the things he's trying to do, and it causes him to take his pants off a lot.
I did a lot of prep by being naked at home a lot to see if I could do it, and I could.
And the first one is that really fish out of water quality with Thor on Earth, which played so well.
The natural thing to do seemed to be to reverse that, take a human up into the Nine Realms and into Asgard.
I was really happy about Jane going to Asgard. We have to do that again. It's such a grand scale, and it really feels sort of operatic when you see just how large everything is.
Alan wanted to expand our sense of the world. He wanted to sort of deepen and shade it. This is the race that the Vikings worshipped.
There's a sort of medieval feel, but there's also a science fiction kind of quality to it.
We're trying to make sure that the medieval doesn't overwhelm and that there's a big dollop of tech in everything, because the whole idea is that the Asgardians aren't really supernatural. They have this extraordinary technology which would seem to us to be magic.
That's a quantum field generator, isn't it?
It's a soul forge.
Does the soul forge transfer molecular energy from one place to another?
Yes.
It's great. It does feel like a place that exists as opposed to a set. There's a worn quality to set. It looks like it's been lived in. And a lot of the sets were built outdoors, so we could use natural lighting as opposed to the indoor studio look.
It really feels like we get to be in Asgard on the outside. It's not all CGI. I mean, they've just done a fantastic job. Every little detail. I mean, even on the tiles on the floor, it's the most intricate details you've ever seen.
The Medina set was sort of the most historic part of this film. You know, we're trying to say that that's nestled into the mountains of Asgard and has been around there for certainly hundreds, if not thousands of years. And that was just simply a world where we wanted to mix an ancient architecture, or certainly an earlier architecture, into something as the city grows above us. It becomes much more modern and futuristic.
Any chance that we could allow to have any vegetation or any animals, birds, horses. We felt like in the first one we didn't feel how Asgard lived, and in this one we try to make sure that we give you that feeling of a full-on city.
We wanted to be true to the idea, both within the Marvel universe and within Norse mythology, that Asgard was a golden city, a throne room. It needed to be beautiful. We needed to be able to get a lot of light in there. It also needed to act as one of the biggest environments in the film for this spectacular kind of crash from this elf ship which charges into it. So there were a lot of engineering issues with it about how this ship cuts through the columns.
My first day's filming was me destroying Odin's throne. It's a vast, cavernous hall. When you see a set like that, or you see a set like this, you realize that your performance has got to dominate that scale, you know, otherwise you're gonna get lost. It needs high definition performing to leap out of a set like this.
Stand down, creature.
Thor's mother and Loki's mother, Frigga, played by Rene Russo, has a much bigger part in this film.
Who are you?
I am Malekith, and I would have what is mine. Where is the ether?
I'll never tell you.
I believe you.
We were looking for a scenario in which we could put Thor and Loki together. That we needed Thor to go ask for Loki's help, and we needed Loki to agree to that help. We realized early on, killing Frigga would be the way to do that, would be able to bond those brothers. But more than that, we wanted Loki to feel a sense of responsibility for his mother's death. When Curse is breaking out all of the other prisoners to wreak havoc during the attack on Asgard, he comes and he sizes up Loki, and even Curse realizes, I'm not gonna let this guy out. This guy's trouble. And as Kurse starts to walk away, Loki shows that he is trouble.
You might want to take the stairs to the left.
Kurse does that, and of course, ultimately ends up killing Frigga.
Loki's indirect responsibility for the downfall of Asgard, his secondary aiding of the Dark Elves and Kurse, breaks him. And now Thor needs Loki because he needs to find Svartalheim, he needs to find the Dark Elves, and he appeals to Loki's need for vengeance. He needs to avenge the death of his mother.
You help me escape Asgard, and I will grant it to you. Vengeance and afterward this cell.
Loki's the only person with the key to the back door, essentially. And this dramatic event gives them a chance to escape.
We knew that we wanted Loki to be more ambiguous in this movie. In the Avengers, we wanted him to be the pure villain. In the Dark World, we want it to be a much more complex relationship.
There's probably an element where Thor and Loki were in the very first film, the beginning, when they were brothers, you know, and there was that friendship, or sort of, there was a less hatred involved. There is, I think, we get to a place where there's more of that this time around, you know? And also, Thor gets to really ask Loki, what do you want? You know, what's this about? What, like, why? How did we get here? And also apologize. Yeah, okay, I maybe played a part in that, but, you know, I think he's able to confront Loki and say it's about time that you kind of recognize your role in this.
What help were you in your cell? Who put me there? Who put me there? You know damn well. You know damn well who. She wouldn't want us to fight.
Well, she wouldn't exactly be shocked.
So we decided we needed to bring in a bad guy. We needed to bring in a guy who was so bad that it would force Thor and Loki to need to team up, and that's where Malekith came in.
You know, suddenly Thor and Loki are bound together on the same journey, going up against Malekith with the same goal, but completely different ways of going about it.
Malekith's backstory goes back at least 5,000 years. He's an ancient villain with a very, very big chip on his shoulder.
He has almost a godlike status among the elves, and he is a slippery character, even in the audition talking to Alan. I thought, how do we make him more interesting than just a cackling fiend? And it was Alan's sensibility and the way we spoke together about the project that made me feel we could perhaps give Malekith some complexity, because that's what the audience demand.
He came to conquer our world and found it already dead by my hand.
The whole world that they've created for the Dark Elves, from the sets and in the locations, you know, shooting out at Iceland, just there's an epic feel to it.
This Thor is called the Dark World, and that is the world of the Dark Elves, and we needed to find a place that could fill that role, and Iceland, with its black volcanic sand and its amazing landscapes, is doing that for us.
This is the world of Svartalheim, and just a moment ago we shot the scene where the Dark Elves first returned home and took deep breaths of poisoned air.
We've scoured the earth to try and find the right spot where we could dress the things that we need to dress on top of a real location. Having the bones there is the most important thing. Getting out and actually being on location, shooting there is the key.
In Iceland, you get such scale. You get purple skies. We were shooting on a volcanic lava field. It looks like another planet. It's bigger than your imagination. It's a good place for elves to be from.
We were incredibly lucky that when we went to Iceland, it was very windy. And although it's difficult to shoot with wind, but then you have proper wind that you can have in such a remote location, which is very difficult to bring any of these fans there. So Mother Nature gives you the wind, which 100% it allows you to believe that what's happening is there, because you would presume to have that kind of wind there.
You know this plan of yours is going to get us killed.
Possibly. For Thor, there's this question of trust. Can Thor trust Loki? But Thor is in a desperate place, so he is forced to trust him. And first example of that is when he takes off the cuffs. So we think that's it. Loki betrays him. And that, of course, in and of itself becomes a trick just for Malekith. And we realize they were working together.
Both characters, Thor and Loki, are exposed for who they really are. And I think they surprise each other. Loki probably, in his heart, wants to be worthy. And the way he achieves that worthiness, the way he achieves his redemption, his salvation, is to ultimately sacrifice himself for Thor and for Jane. He goes down with the ship. It's, I hope, a very cathartic and moving moment by saving his brother's life and avenging his mother's death.
Loki seemingly sacrifices himself to help save Thor. We think he's wounded, but it wasn't a death blow for the powerful Asgardian.
I'll tell Father what you did here today.
I didn't do it for him.
Thor now is heading into a battle with Malekith, the person who killed his mother, the person that Thor believes, at least, is responsible for the death of his brother. And Thor has all of that rage and all of that motivation going into our final battle.
Malekith!
Sometimes going huge in spectacle is different than going huge in concept. But we wanted to do something interesting, something that haven't been seen before, a battle that ties into the story. We came up with the idea that Thor and Malekith are fighting through portals and going from London to Svartalfheim. I think it's interesting visually.
It's almost like this energy suction point that you go from one world to the other. And we bring some wonderful characters from the first one. The gigantic beast that comes out that then eats one of the elves.
By turning the battlefield upside down in such a way, it gave this film a very unique voice in the end.
How do I get to Greenwich?
Take this train, 3 stops.
How can we outsmart ourselves to make sure that we keep it fresh and new and renewed of something different? And I think the ether becoming its own element of danger. I think that what we created with Malekith, when he actually does possess the ether and how he throws it and what he creates this shards of knives, and it looks really dangerous. And if it were to get you, it will slash you. And that's something that it was a little different too, that we wanted to try. It could look at something almost ethereal and mystical and beautiful, and yet as dangerous as the most deadly weapon.
There's so many pieces in the puzzle and so many different sections and departments and what have you that everyone's doing their bit, and that's such a satisfying thing when it comes together and it works, and it is what you thought it was going to be and hoped it would be.
The ether cannot be destroyed.
But you can.
Thor returns to Asgard and realizes what he wants. He doesn't want to be king. He doesn't want to be on the throne.
Loki, for all his grave imbalance, understood Brule as I know I never will. The brutality, the sacrifice, it changes you. I'd rather be a good man than a great king.
Go, my son.
Thank you, Father.
We're left at the end of this movie with the two brothers both achieving essentially what they want. Thor realizing he wants to be with the Avengers. He wants to be with Jane. He wants to see what it would be like to be protector of this world. He's not meant to lead from sitting on top of the universe. And Loki, who always wanted to sit on that throne, is doing just that.
No. Thank you. The really exciting thing about the world of Thor is you have at the center of it a man who is wrestling with his identity. He's arguing with his father. He has a very complicated relationship with his brother, which is where I come in. And he has a woman he loves. And I think all of the characters within that landscape are infused with a humanity, and a humanity that seems to reflect our own. And then alongside it, you have fantastic explosions and action set pieces that are intrinsically cinematic. They thrill you and they excite you, and that's why we all love the movies, is because it's like magic. And that's why we're all doing it, is for that magic moment.
We started this journey 3 years ago, and to be here now with this kind of affection and following is a dream.
It's got this gigantic cosmic scope. It's a movie that takes place on all these other worlds and realms, and yet it's really about family and about these two brothers.
We have to, as filmmakers, delve deeper into their characters and tell stories that are not easy for them, that there's a lot of obstacles.
It's a complicated family, the family of Asgard. Thor, Loki, Odin, Frigga. They've got some differences to resolve. And the fact that there are people who love these characters, love these films, I mean, it's a privilege and a pleasure.